We are live around the world on 3news.com. That's our website. We are also streaming on Facebook, and if you're watching us on DSTV, this is channel 279.
We first begin from the Upper West region, where two more suspects have been arrested in connection with the murder of the chief executive officer of the Cozy Hill Hotel at Drapa in the region, bringing to 7 the number of arrests in connection with the murder. The CEO, Eric Johnson, was found in a pool of blood in one of his hotel rooms on Sunday, February 11. A team of investigators from Accra was deployed to partner with the Upper West Regional Crime Scene Management Team to ensure that the perpetrators are apprehended and prosecuted. The 7 suspects, all workers of Royal Cozy Hills, have been detained and assisting police in investigations. They are Dukuri Foster, Brima Kasim, Beyo Felix, Michael Kluge, and Kumbata Kweku, Charles Toze and Favor Nube. The body of the late businessman has been deposited at the Wa Regional Hospital morgue, awaiting autopsy.
Let's come to the Ashanti region now. Newly sworn-in assembly members have implored government to ensure the timely release of the Common Fund for district assemblies. They observed that the continuous delay in the release of the funds impedes local community development. The assembly members were resoundingly pushing out this call on them by the Minister of Local Government and Decentralization and Rural Development, Daniel Kweku Botwe, to live up to their core mandate of bringing the development gap in their various electoral areas.
Speaking at the inauguration and swearing in of elected and appointed members of the 9th Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, Dan Botwe tasked them to prioritize the development needs of their electoral areas. But some assembly members say the delay in the release of Common Fund may hinder their effort to address the developmental needs of their people. Already, most metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies have not received the quarterly fund for more than a year. This, according to some assembly members, has led to a halt in many community projects.
For ASAFO, one of our major challenges has got to do with the police station. It was put in the action plan in 2021, 2022 it was rollover, 2023 it was rollover. So we are now in 2024. When you ask, they say we don't have enough funds. It delays projects in the various electoral areas, and it doesn't work well for the assembly.
Our electorates are looking up to us for us to also do our best for the community. So we are also urging the minister to also tell the people up there to also help us get the Common Fund for us to execute our projects.
In a sharp response, the minister said the delay in release of Common Fund should not be used as an excuse not to develop the electoral areas, since the assemblies generate more IGF than what they receive as Common Fund.
The internally generated funds all stay in the assembly for the assembly's work. So that is done. We all have to question that and find out why. The other aspect of the executive that we have to admit is to also ensure that the finance ministry releases the money to the Common Fund as regularly as it should.
On the issue of female participation in local governance, Dan Botwe was concerned about their low representation. Of the 66 members forming the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, only 6 are women, out of which 2 were elected and 4 appointed. The local government minister wants to see this improved.
It's still very low in terms of those who put themselves up for election. If you look at the analysis, we have course to be done about the first 6 or 7 elections. It's not satisfactory at all. Other is about 4%. That is why Mr. President has directed that in the area of the appointees, the aim is that district should submit for appointment 30% of the government appointees.
After a second round voting, the incumbent presiding member, Patrick Kwame Frimpong, who doubles as the assembly member for Crow from East, was retained to steer the affairs of the assembly for the next 2 years. Ibrahim Abubakar, TV3 News, Kumasi.
And at the inauguration of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, former Chief Justice and Council of State member Georgina Wood urged Assembly members to enforce planning standards, compliance laws and regulations governing human settlements and spatial planning.
The inauguration follows the December district-level elections, which elected new Assembly and Unit Committee members for the next 4 years. MC for Accra Metropolitan Assembly, Elizabeth Saki, encouraged Assembly members to deal with issues of sanitation, revenue mobilization and stakeholder management within their various assemblies.
A few critical areas of particular importance are the management of environmental sanitation, revenue mobilization and stakeholders management, especially in project execution. We recognize the significance of these areas in achieving our overall objective of improving the quality of life for our electorates. I urge all members to lend their full support to the management of the Assembly in these endeavors.
Council of State member and former Chief Justice Theodora Wood expressed concerns about improper land use and charged Assembly members to ensure land laws are adhered to.
The leadership challenges at the district level are enormous and complex. Assembly members are unable to effectively deliver because of inadequate resources. Your predecessor's attention was drawn to a major challenge relating to unplanned and haphazard development within the jurisdiction of most district assemblies. This phenomenon has serious implications for national development and public safety. It is my ardent hope that you will help enforce planning standards and compliance of the land use, as well as other regulations governing human settlements and planning.
The Accra Metropolitan Assembly adjourned the election of its presiding member after the nominee and incumbent, Alfred Asidu-Adjei, failed to secure the Assembly member's mandate.
Still on issues regarding local governance, the Chamber of Local Governance is advocating for the allocation of a portion of the District Assembly's Common Fund to Assembly members for purposes of development in their electoral areas. This, the Chamber argues, would enhance the relevance of Assembly members in the country's governance structure.
The Constitution created the District Assembly's Common Fund to transfer financial resources from the central government to local governments. The statutory fund accrues from the provision of an allocation of not less than 5% of the total revenues of Ghana to the District Assemblies for development, and the amount shall be paid into the District Assembly's Common Fund in quarterly installments. Dr. Richard Fiadomo of the Chamber of Local Governance is of the view that Assembly members must be given a share of the fund to undertake development projects in the electoral areas.
Look at the Assembly members, they are supposed to be the representatives of the people. Yet we have a District Assembly's Common Fund that is meant for development at the MMPs. We have a situation whereby members of Parliament are ex officio members of the Assembly, yet they are entitled to about 8% share of the DACF. Unfortunately, Assembly members who are bona fide members of the Assembly members who are the direct representatives of the people in their respective electoral areas do not even have 1 peso allocated to them in terms of the DACF. And for me, I think that is most unfortunate.
The assemblies are responsible for overall development of the district, municipality or metropolis, including promotion of local economic development, basic education and public health, environmental protection and sanitation, and the improvement and management of human settlements.
All right, so let's really find out what has been the bane of a number of these local assembly members. Let's go to the phone lines now. Dr. Frederick Oduro is a local governance expert and analyst. He's joined us for a conversation on this. Doc, a very good evening to you. Thank you for your time.
Good evening.
We have had the swearing in of new assembly members today. Common fund allocation has come up again for conversation. They are already in arrears. This issue of the allocation of funds for the running of our local assemblies has been, seems to be a generational challenge. From the perspective of, someone who watches this space keenly, what is it that we are getting wrong in resolving the funds allocated for the development of local assemblies?
Well, that's largely dependent on the national economy, how it's faring. When there is the nationally, we are doing well economically, it is easy for government to give out monies that are due to the assemblies. However, when the government itself is struggling, you get such situations. And I also think even beyond the late releases, there's also the challenge of whether they get what is actually due them. That is, the law as it stands says 5%. Do we really give the assemblies the 5%? Then also there's the question of adequacy of that 5%. So to start with, there are myriad of issues. The assemblies are not getting the required 5%. The 5% itself is woefully inadequate. And then you have the challenges that they are not getting what should go to them. And finally, whatever is given to them is also not released on time. Then it affects everything they do at the district level. Moreover, there is a challenge with the creation of our assemblies in this country. The law is quite clear. Key things that are considered in the creation of a district assembly include the population, the size of the population, the geographic contiguity, and then economic viability.
Right.
But we've been creating assemblies willy-nilly without considering the economic viability of some of these assemblies. So when it comes to the question of the assemblies raising their own internally generated funds, that is woefully inadequate. There are areas that rely almost solely on the District Assembly Common Fund. And I think it is not sustainable. And we need to begin a discussion on what is the best way to ensure that the assemblies get adequate funds to do their activities.
Right, and that's the next question I would want to, see if you could help us answer, which will be that beyond the fact that these local assemblies are given money or have to wait to be given money to operate and function, are there other ways they can raise their own revenue locally?
Yes, they are supposed to, because the law, the Act 936, gives them powers to raise funds. This is through quite a number of areas, the property rates and the normal rates they have to do, business operating licenses, a number of issues, some of them motor licenses and other things. Those are all there for the assemblies. But the problem that have arisen is the efficiency with which they collect some of these monies.
Right.
The assemblies themselves seem not to be working hard enough to put in place systems that will enable them collect much of these assigned revenue heads. But over the period, they fail to do that. And that's also another challenge with the funding of local governance in this country. We need assemblies to be up and doing well. That's how I'll put it.
Okay.
But there was an issue that was raised in your intro that I think I need to make a comment, if you will give me permission.
Kindly do.
It concerns assembly members asking to be given certain funds to control. Let's not condone acts of illegality. Already, the so-called common fund allocated to the members of parliament is illegal. But because it's members of parliament getting it, everybody is quiet in this country. That one is illegal. And now you have assembly members also coming to tell us that, give us money to control. These are public funds, for Christ's sake, and nobody should be given the power to singularly decide how public funds are there. The assembly members they control every fund the assembly uses. Through the General Assembly, they must approve the use of funds before they can be used.
Okay.
So if that is not enough for them, then they should think about why they become assembly members in the first place.
Doc, thank you so much. That's a cogent point to end on. Dr. Frederick Oduro is a local governance expert. We would interrogate this particular angle further in subsequent bulletins.
This is your Election Command Center. It will be a battle of policies. Well, that appears certain as the December 7 general elections inches closer, with initial policy briefs announced by the two major parties and the manifesto still being developed. Mawena, editor of our political desk, has been assessing what the two leading candidates have promised on some key issues.
The ball's been set rolling. An election that will be dominated by whose policy is superior. After Dr. Bawumia's announcement of his vision, the door has been opened for a conversation on policy. Let's start with taxes, the biggest talking point since last week. John Mahama has promised to scrap the e-levy, betting tax, and all taxes introduced by the Akufo-Addo administration. Dr. Bawumia, on the other hand, has promised similar, removing the emissions tax, betting tax, and the e-levy. With taxes comes the economy. Dr. Bawumia aims at building a digital economy, leveraging technology to transform agriculture, manufacturing, health, and public service, among others. For John Mahama, a 24-hour economy, slow down the decline of the Ghanaian economy, and reform the central bank and the country's financial system. On job creation, the NPP flag bearer says his administration would train at least 1 million youth in IT skills to provide job opportunities with private sector partnership. Similarly, John Mahama aims to attract viable private partnership to invest in productive sectors with emphasis on agriculture and agribusiness. On the corruption front, the NPP's Dr. Bawumia aims to leverage the fight against graft on the ECD and digitalization to track down fraud and money movement. John Mahama, on the other hand, says corruption institutions of the state will be empowered to be independent in their work. We'll end perhaps with education, where free SHS continues to dominate conversations in the sector. John Mahama has promised to review the current program and end the double-track system across the country. For Dr. Bawumia, the plan is simple: to improve the implementation. The policies are similar, with both candidates promising to review the 1992 Constitution, scrap the payment of ex gratia, and running a lean government. For political scientist Dr. Asa Asante, Ghana's politics has shifted to issue-based conversations.
What we are seeing from each of the political parties, particularly NDC and MPP, is a reflection of the fact that we are growing as a democracy. And a number of things are also happening in our society, which we need to tweak our party manifestos and programs to reflect the changing circumstances of the time. So what we are seeing is no news, but the real difference is how they walk the talk in all this area.
But what does the ordinary Ghanaian make of the announced promises?
I'll prefer the digitalization, because that might really help, but to make work very easy for us.
I think the 24 hours will be better for Ghana economy now.
I think Ghana needs the 24-hour economy over digitalization, because looking at our nation right now, you realize that a lot of people are not so accustomed to the digital platforms and what have you.
I should think we should do what is happening right now. So I think digitalization would help.
Dr. Asa Asante argues the parties must disaggregate the issues to ensure efficiency in delivery.
There are what we call the national issue, tease them out, and then come out with it, and then discuss them. And then there are what we call constituency-specific issues. tease them out, discuss them along those lines. But in all these things, you should be able to spell out the fine details so that you leave no doubt in the minds of anybody.
The ultimate decision lies with the Ghanaian voter, with the task laid down firmly for the major parties to convince citizens on what policy best serves their interests and needs.
Right, more politically related stories. In most democracies, gaining power is an open exercise, allowing ordinary individuals to strive for greatness. But hereditary positions raise concerns among some. Duke Mensah Opoku of our political desk evaluates the increasing trend of second-generation politicians directly taking after their parents.
President Akufo-Addo, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and the NDC's John Dramani Mahama are all second-generation politicians. Akufo-Addo's father, Justice Edward Akufo-Addo, was a ceremonial president in the Second Republic. Dr. Bawumia's father, Alhaji Muni Bawumia, was MP, minister, and one-time chairman of the Council of State. And John Mahama's father, Emmanuel Adama Mahama, was an MP and minister under the Nkrumah regime. The current parliament has a number of politicians taking after their parents in there. In the current parliament, there are a number of second-generation politicians who are applying their trade in the House. There is Zaneto Rawlings, whose father was the president of this country, and she now represents the people of Klote-Kole in parliament. There's also Farouk Aliyu Mahama, who is member of parliament for Yendi, whose father, Alhaji Aliyu Mahama, was vice president under the Kufuor regime. And then there is Betty Crosby Mensah, whose father was member of parliament for Afram Plains. For MP for Afram Plains North, Dr. Betty Crosby Mensah, irrespective of the fact that her father, Crosby Mensah, was also MP, her path into politics and parliament was not an easy ride.
Most often, when I even went round, I saw that in the deepest of rural communities, there were some level of infrastructure that the people attributed to my father. Yes, still, the communities came out to say that because my father did not perform, I wasn't fit to handle the position. And so, to some extent, I wouldn't say it gave me a leap, but I believe sincerely that as a person holding that office must have definitely had an impact.
Ralph Poku-Edusei has just won the NPP primary to contest the safe seat of Bekwai in the Ashanti region, beating national policing sensation COP retired George Alex Mensah. 3 generations of his family have been involved in UP MPP politics. He says he owes his trajectory to the influence of his forebears.
My father is a founding member of the Bekwai constituency. As a matter of fact, when you look at the history, he was the first elected constituency chairman. That naturally brought my interest in politics up. Not forgetting that my father's junior brother was the member of parliament elected in the year 2000-2001, and he served under His Excellency the former President John Agyekum Kufuor for 8 good years. Honorable Kofi Adusei, former MP.
But is this a good trend?
If we allow the children of politicians to take charge, we still wouldn't have the feel of the country. Moreover, we are complaining about embezzlement and mismanagement and other stuff, and then it's a trend. It will still go in that same direction.
Some of the politicians are very good. Let me use the late Rawlings as an example. He was the president of Ghana, and then now his daughter, Honorable Zenato, is an MP for Osu-Klote, and she's working very well.
In the UK Parliament, there are 67 MPs who are either related to current or former MPs. And in the US, the Kennedys, Bushes, DuPonts, among others, are established political families. For political historian at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Professor Samuel Edujemfi, the phenomenon presents merits and demerits, but a lot more is expected of these second-generation politicians because they have to live up to their family name.
It should not just be privileges to move to a certain height by virtue of family name or a kind of glory which your parent had some years ago. You'd rather have the privilege or the opportunity to pursue your own ambitions within the realm of what you have learned from your father. When you come only by virtue of what your father has been able to chalk over the period, you may falter, you may fumble, you may not be able to live up to expectation.
Duke Bento Poku, TV3 News, Accra.
In more news tonight, former president and flag bearer of the NDC is urging minority MPs to be vigilant and resist policies government intends to introduce in its final lap as elections are due in 9 months. Addressing a retreat of the NDC MPs in Ho, John Mahama commended the MPs for standing up to government and fighting harsh conditions imposed on the ordinary Ghanaian.
They have been so bad that their own poster boy is attempting an inexplicable and contrived separation between himself and the happenings in the very government he was touted as the brain behind. For purely electoral purposes. I know that you have only in the last few days returned to Parliament after the Christmas break to continue with important business of state. Your return is opportune and timely, as it affords you an opportunity to maintain even greater vigilance and oversight over a government that is increasingly becoming desperate and will no doubt be attempting to ram draconian policies down the throats of Ghanaians. On the evidence of what we've seen so far, I believe I speak for the generality of Ghanaians when I say that you in the minority have lived up to expectation. And you've done this by putting in valiant efforts to check the excesses of this government. You've stood firmly and pushed back against blatant abuse of parliamentary rules and standing orders. You've held this marauding government at bay and fought against their very unpopular policies. I must remind you not to lose sight of the fact that you, as minority members of parliament, have become about the last bulwark between an overbearing and desperate and non-performing government and the people of Ghana. Ghanaians are counting on you to secure them against poor governance and keep this government in check. The effort you put into this will contribute to the consolidation of the confidence that Ghanaians have in the NDC due to our much better track record, our commitment to do better, and the well-considered policy proposals like the 24-hour economy program, which aims to build an economy that works around the clock to enable economic recovery, expansion, and creating more jobs for our suffering youth.
Still watching News 360 on TV3. Stay with us. When we return, we'll let you know what's happening in the world of business, sports, entertainment, all coming up. Welcome back to News 360. Time now for business, and Michael is with us. So, what's going on? Ghana has in the past been warned, cautioned, blacklisted, but the caution now is that what?
So the BOG is taking steps to make sure we don't get back on that list.
Okay. Give us the detail.
Hello there, good evening, and welcome to the business segment here on News 360. I am Michael Obudu. Now, a national risk assessment on money laundering and terrorism financing has commenced to evaluate Ghana's readiness to prevent blacklisting by the European Union. Following a successful evaluation of the country's regime against the practice, the Financial Action Task Force removed the country from its list of non-compliant jurisdictions. The Flow Report has the details.
The European Commission on January 7, 2022 removed Ghana from the EU blacklist, recognizing the country's efforts in addressing strategic deficiencies in its anti-money laundering counter-terrorist financing regimes. Speaking at the opening of the pre-assessment workshop held in Accra, Second Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Elsie Ado-Awaji, expressed optimism that Ghana would successfully pass the third round of evaluation.
In 2025, we have another opportunity. We're going to go to the third round of the mutual evaluation. After all of the reforms we put in place that got us off all the adverse listings, where are we today? The geopolitical risks around the world, as you know, have increased. So where does that leave Ghana?
Elsie Ado Awaji also revealed the Bank of Ghana's commitment to ensuring that accountable institutions regulated comply with the central bank's anti-money laundering guidelines.
In January, we had already started sensitizing the universal banks of this exercise and of the upcoming third round evaluation. And we continue to sensitize the smaller financial institutions we regulate and supervise, just so that they can hold themselves in readiness.
Meanwhile, the Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, GIABA, has underscored the need for a self-assessment of Ghana's preparedness for the third round of evaluation in 2025. Muazu Umaru is Director of Policy and Research at GIABA.
It provides direction for regulatory, supervisory and enforcement authorities so that they know where they face. The outcome of the NRA also provides a critical input for the development of a national risk-based approach framework that will guide the reporting entities in the implementation of the RBA.
Now, importers in the country are demanding clarity from Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia on his promise on flat tax proposal when elected as president. The vice president, who is also the NPP presidential candidate, at an event held in Accra where he presented his vision when elected as president, declared his dedication to introducing a uniform tax rate on spare parts imports. Speaking to 3 Business, Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana, Samson Asaki Awingobet, said the policy was unrealistic.
If you actually want to reduce the rate of the tax at the port, you will have to go or write to ECOWAS Commission for them to give you that permit to do some reduction. And if ECOWAS should give you the permission, you have to come back to our parliament for it to rectify it. So I am unable to know which rate he's going to give. Is it that he's going to say, okay, if you bring an invoice value of let's say 100,000 Ghana cedis, we will say we'll pay 50,000 and then carry your container and go. Or if I bring an invoice value of $100,000, you say pay $20,000, then you carry your thing and go away. I don't know how that is going to be done, but it's not going to be an easy thing.
Economist Professor Peter Quartey has emphasized the importance of empowering indigenous businesses to mitigate the impact of fund repatriation on the cedi. Professor Quartey identifies this phenomenon as a significant factor contributing to the depreciation of the local currency, hence the need for concerted efforts to address it. The Ghana cedi ended 2023 with a year-to-date depreciation of 15.57% to the US dollar in the retail market.
Investors, when they come in and invest, certainly have the right to repatriate profit, but that's why they came. If you want to minimize that, then you should also encourage local participation, encourage local entrepreneurs to also invest in some of this area, create the avenues. There are Ghanaians who have capital, they have money, but perhaps might not know some of these opportunities exist. So there is the role of the Ministry of Trade and Industry and government to make some of these bold steps, identify a few rich entrepreneurs, put them together, or banks, and let them finance some of these operations, and that will inure to our benefit. But if we leave everything to foreign capital, then we'll be caught, in this web where every now and then they have to repatriate profits.
I'll be all for the business segment here on News 360. I am Michael Obodu. Up next is sports.
Welcome back to News 360. Some of us are still reeling in the excitement that Ivory Coast won. I said Ivory Coast would win here on this show.
And I like your title. It's matching Ivorian colors.
Wow, sharp. Yeah. So clearly it was good news for most of us. Unfortunately, we don't bet. I would have bet that Ivory Coast should win. Anyway, let's talk local football now.
Yeah.
We'll actually have to talk about Ivory Coast, but we'll talk local football because a goal each from Solomon Abuaje and Giasu Ibrahim were enough to send Kotoko crashing out of the Ghana FA Cup and send Karela United to the last 8 of the competition. And that is definitely a big day for Karela United. On a sunny day at the Aliyu Mahama Stadium, both teams displayed commendable performances in the first half, but neither managed to score. Abuaje's goal gave Karela United the lead. Despite Kotoko's efforts and numerous chances they created, after conceding, they still failed to capitalize. In the 65th minute, Giasu extended Karela United's lead with an impressive shot, securing a 2-0 victory for his team by the end of the 90 minutes. Now, with just about 3 weeks left to the start of the 2023 Africa Games, the Borteyman Sports Complex nears completion. Billy Shen visited the facility earlier today and has this report.
The Borteyman Sports Complex is one of the facilities earmarked to host the 2023 African Games this year. 7 disciplines, namely badminton, tennis, table tennis, handball, volleyball, swimming, and a triathlon, will be held in Borteyman. 8 disciplines during the 13th African Games will serve as qualifiers for the 2024 Olympic Games, and 4 of those disciplines will take place at the sports complex.
This is the Dome. It is a place that has been specifically set up for table tennis and also handball for the 2023 African Games. It has gotten to a stage where it's almost completed with just a few finishing touches needed. The workers have been here working day and night to make sure that the facility is in the best possible shape for the Games.
There is also the tennis building, a facility constructed for tennis players to compete for medals. Next is the multi-purpose building. The facility will house badminton and volleyball players. It is a fully air-conditioned edifice that can take up to 1,000 people. A few meters away from the multi-purpose edifice is the aquatic center for swimmers.
To my right is the aquatic complex. This building has been set up for swimmers who are hoping to get into the 2024 Olympic Games. It has a 1,000-seater capacity and it has 10 lanes for the swimmers to compete. One side for those who are warming up and the other side for those who will be competing. And also to my left side is an athletic oval which has been set up for people who are just warming up and then gearing themselves to compete in the various complexes.
Deputy Director General of the National Sports Authority, Majid Bawa, is confident that Ghana will be ready to host the continental sporting event.
Everything will be set before the opening ceremony, which will take place at Legon. And if you have visited Legon, you would have seen the work that is ongoing. And we are hoping that by close of next week, everything will be fixed for the opening ceremony.
The Games are expected to start in early March, and efforts have been made to ensure that the facilities in Borteyman are ready for commissioning.
We'll be building up to the Africa Games after the AFCON. All our focus will be on the games happening right here in Accra. But that'll be all for the sports here. And we'll bring you some more sports content, including the Bas Parade and Open Parade that Ivory Coast are currently, experiencing and enjoying after winning the Africa Cup of Nations 2023. My name is Thierry Nyan, and I'll see you some other time.